My friend said she was going to tell a story about her parents' first date. She said she didn't like telling the story, since it was actually true, but we prodded her on. To cut to the chase, the parents had spent a nice, if awkward, first date, and around the time that they would have said goodnight, the male in the situation, my friend's dad, suggested that they go for a midnight hike up Provo Canyon. He apparently knew the place, since he had done a fair amount of rock climbing in the area. So the two drove up the mouth of the canyon, got out of their cars, and started hiking under just the light of the stars, since it was a new moon. At some point, the male starts getting a bad feeling, since the pathway ahead, which would pass under some trees, would be dark, and because it was getting to be quite late. He ignores the feeling and presses on. In later rehearsings of the story, the female would say that she had felt the same feeling at what was probably the same time, though she didn't know the trail like he did. A minute later, the feeling came back to the male. He ignored it again, and started walking a bit of the way into the trees when his foot hit something soft in the middle of the path. Under the trees, it was too dark to see just what this soft thing was, and the feeling came back stronger than ever. Instead of finding out what his foot had bumped into, he and the female both agreed to hightail it out of there. Years later, after being married for some time, they were watching an interview with the serial killer, Ted Bundy. In response to a question asking him to describe the time that he felt the closest to being caught, he explained about the night that he lured a girl into Provo Canyon and had just killed her when he heard some people coming up the trail. He explained how he hid in the trees just in time, only to watch some guy walk right into the body, and for some reason, just turn around and walk away.
When I was in 8th grade, I went on a school trip that was called the Louisiana Tour. It was mostly going around to significant sites in South Louisiana. One of the places we went was Merle's Plantation, which is considered to be one of the most haunted places in the country. There were all kinds of stories about the place, but at one point we were standing in a room as a part of a larger group, and the tour guide was talking about something. I don't remember what. As I'm standing there, I start to hear what sounds like someone hitting a piano key. After I heard it a couple of times, I started to look around for the source of the noise. I didn't see a piano, but I kept hearing it. So I asked my friends who were standing near me if they heard it. They said no. When I heard it again, I said there is it again, and that they must have heard it. They thought I was crazy. So I went back to looking around the room. Everyone's eyes were on the tour guide, except for one woman. She caught my eye and pointed at me, and then at her ear with a questioning look. I realized she was asking if I heard it too, and I nodded. At this point, the tour guide starts telling a story about a soldier who had died there, and that he played the piano, and multiple guests have reported. Hearing him playing in the night, I honestly didn't know what to think. I guess I still don't. I talked to the woman as we were all leaving the room, and she had heard the exact same thing as me, but her husband and son had not heard it.
I was at a friend's house around 12 years ago. We were in the basement watching TV when his mom's boyfriend comes down the stairs and tells us to keep it down. We looked at each other, confused because we were literally just watching TV and it wasn't on high volume at all. We said we weren't being loud and he said you aren't yelling, and we shook our heads. He just sort of does the look and tells us he and my friend's mom had heard someone screaming coming up from the furnace vents. So though it was coming from the basement where the furnace is, we didn't hear anything and were like 15 feet away from the furnace. Sadly, I can't verify the next story because I wasn't there, but my friend and another friend say they were upstairs in the kitchen one night hanging out, and they heard a scream, clear as day, coming out of one of the furnace vents. Freaked them out, naturally, but I never did get to hear it. Probably just metal creaking, but it was weird that we were so close to it and didn't hear anything that could be interpreted as a scream.
I was visiting family for winter break in Los Angeles. This was about 5 years ago. I was heading to the bathroom on the second floor of my aunt's house when I saw my cousin April on the stairs. April was 4 and very animated. She was busy making funny faces while sitting on the stairs. I asked her what she was doing. She said, "I'm copying the lady with the braid." I looked around. There was no one else but us. I asked, "Where is the lady, April?" She pointed to a beam running parallel to the stairwell. I asked April, "What is the lady doing?" She said, "Making funny faces." I smiled and started walking up the stairs again, when April said something that stopped me in my tracks. "April, her braids is around her neck." I turned back and asked April to repeat herself. April pointed. The lady is hanging by her braid. She's making funny faces. Then April started making a face, which I then realized was it someone gasping for air.
A few years ago, I went to a Christmas party. That night, my housemates went home earlier, while I decided to stay and get in the Christmas spirit with a few other friends. I ended up getting pretty hammered and got home around 3 a.m. Instead of going straight to bed, I got another beer inside, then went out the back porch to have a smoke and look at the stars. I was outside a couple of minutes when I see the light go on in the kitchen. My housemate comes out and look at me out the back. I wave and generally look like a drunk idiot. I thought he was going to come out and get a debrief on the rest of the evening, as there were some good laughs we had not relevant to this story. Anyway, he just gets a glass of water and goes to bed. I finish my smoke and beer, and so do I. The next morning, we're rehashing the previous night when he mentions getting up and seeing me having a smoke out the back. Who came back from the party with you last night? I give him a sideways look and reply, "No one, dude. I was out there alone." He insists, "Nah, man, there was someone out there with you, behind you on the porch, when you were looking inside waving. I didn't come out because I thought it was some random friend from the Christmas party I didn't know. Couldn't be bothered making introductions." To this day, he stands by this version of events. Whoever it was must have been standing close behind me the whole time. I saw no one and heard nothing. Gives me the willies every time I think about it.
First, I'm going to say I'm very skeptical of this kind of stuff, but I have had one encounter that I cannot explain. It may not sound spine-chilling reading it, but it creeped me out, and I still think about it all these years later. So I was 15 years old, and my mom and dad, I moved to a new house out in the country. When we moved, my parents had brand new carpet put in the house before we moved in. Our third night there, it was just my mom and I. My dad was gone for work, and my mom was telling me goodnight. And as she was walking out my door, she stops and looks at the floor and says, "That's creepy." I get up and I look, and there is a full single small footprint in the carpet facing towards the doorway to my room. One footprint. And it was smaller than my mom's footprint and my footprint we checked. It creeped my mom out and myself out because brand new carpet, no one else had been in the house since we moved in except us three. And the footprint was definitely not there the first 2 days we lived there. My mom is Old Testament religious and doesn't believe in that stuff. But even now, 13 years later, when I bring it up, she refuses to talk about. I often wonder where that footprint came from and who it belonged to.